بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة فاغسلوا وجوهكم وأيديكم إلى المرافق وامسحوا برؤوسكم وأرجلكم إلى الكعبين.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين. Dear brothers and sisters, we have been explaining the rules of Wudhu. We explained some of the rules, and some of the rules are left to be elaborated and to be explained in this session. Of course, Wudhu can be performed in two ways. One is the regular, which is known to everybody, that is that you pour water on your face and hands and you do the wiping on the front part of the head, and then you wipe on the upper part of the feet. That is the normal and ordinary method of performing wudu. But did you know that wudu can be performed by immersing your hands and your face in water also? That is called wudu irtimasi, or wudu by way of immersion. So wudu by immersion means you dip your face into water, and then also you dip your hands into water and pull out your face and your hands out of water. This is called wudu by immersion. Of course, in the same way that we described in the previous session, that you need to wash your face and your hands from the upper part downward, in the same way, if you are going to put your face in water, first of all you need to put your face, the upper part of your face into water, and then the lower part of your face. This has to be done, and this is necessary to be done. Otherwise, if you start washing your fingers and then dip your elbows into water, this is not correct. First of all, you need to dip your elbows into water, and then gradually your whole hands should go into water. This is wudu by immersion, and wudu by immersion is valid. It is in order. There is no doubt and there is no question about it. Now, brothers and sisters, there are some conditions that need to be met in order for a wudu to be valid. What are the conditions of the validity of wudu? And what are the requirements? Of course, wudu needs certain elements that need to be present, that need to be available in order for it to be valid, to be correct. So there are as many as 12 or 13 conditions that the ground religious authorities and scholars have enumerated in their epistles of Islamic laws. And inshallah, I will explain those conditions and those necessary elements and those requirements one by one. Now, the first condition that is to be available and that needs to be met is that the water should be ritually pure. You cannot perform wudu with impure water, and also the water should not be solid it should not be murky. It should not be murky. Now, if there is water, but it is murky, it is a kind of water, flood water that's normally murky, you cannot use it. You cannot use it to perform wudu. Of course, if you are in a hurry and the water remains to be murky, you have to perform tayammum. But if you have enough time, you have to wait until the dirt or the dust settles and goes down and the water becomes limpid. So you should remember that you must always perform and make your wudu with limpid, clear and unmixed water. Of course, or the second condition which is necessary to be available is that the water should not be mixed. As I said in the previous sessions, you cannot perform wudu with water that has been extracted or taken from apple, from oranges and from fruit. So the water should be pure, should be unmixed, and it should not come from apples, from any other things. So water and mixed water, however large its quantity might be, will not be sufficient for wudu. And it is not sufficient for wudu, nor is it sufficient for ghusl. So you have to perform wudu with unmixed water. The third condition is that the water should be mubah. The water should be permissible. It should be permissible for use. You cannot use water which you have which someone else has stolen from someone else, or which someone else has taken by force from some other people. So the water which you are going to use for wudu or for ghusl, it does not make any difference. It should be permissible with the consent. If you have taken it from someone, it should be with the consent of some people. It should not be usurped water. And of course, the fourth condition is that the container which you use for wudu should also be mubah. You cannot use a container, or you cannot use a jug or something that has been stolen from someone else, or that has been taken from someone without his consent, without his permission, of course. So the container should also be mubah, and it should not be a usurped property. It should not be a usurped object.
يا محول الحول والأحوال حول حالنا حول حالنا يا أحسن الحال.
The fifth condition that is necessary to be taken into consideration is that the container should not be made of gold and silver. Of course, gold and silver, as you know, it's haram for men to wear gold and silver, but of course, as far as a container is concerned, some scholars have exercised precaution. They have said that it's not permissible to use a container for making wudu, for performing wudu, a container which is made of gold and silver. So make sure that the container which you are going to use is not made of silver, nor is it made of gold. Now the sixth condition, of course, is that the parts of the body on which wudu is performed should be clean at the time of washing and at the time of wiping. Now the hands, the fingers, the face, and also the feet and the front part of your head, they should be clean. They should not have been made impure. Now if you know that, for example, your hands are impure, they are najis, they are ritually unclean, first of all what you are going to do is to wash it, to make it clean, to purify it. And then after you have purified your hands or feet, then you can perform. Wudu would be valid only in the case when your hands, your face, and the parts of your feet on which you are going to wipe are clean. Otherwise, your wudu would not be valid. Now, if any other part of the body is impure, if you are going to perform wudu, your wudu would be valid. For example, your leg is impure or your clothes are impure. You are going to perform wudu. It will not affect your wudu. You can wash that part of your body later on. You can do it. You can purify yourself, the body. Of course, those parts of the body which are not included within the wudu parts, then of course your wudu would be valid. And you can wash it before performing wudu or after performing wudu. Sometimes, of course, when you are washing your face and hands, you have a cut or a wound on your hand or on your face, and the moment you start washing, or even before it, your face is bleeding or your hand is bleeding. So what are you going to do with the blood on your hand? Of course, the ulama and scholars have said that if the blood does not stop, then you need to push it with your fingers to close the blood or the cut for a while, so that when you are washing or when you dip your hand into water, the blood does not come out at that moment. Once you have performed wuzu, the blood starts coming out again. In that case, if the blood comes out, it will not affect your wuzu. The blood on your hand and on your feet, provided that the blood comes from the wound or it comes from the cut, will not affect your wuzu. The seventh condition is that the person doing wudu should have sufficient time at his disposal for wudu and namaz, for wudu and prayer. Of course, if you don't have enough time, and if you are short of time to the extent that you cannot make wudu, then in that case it is your duty, it is your obligation to perform tayammum. And of course, if tayammum takes as much time as wudu takes, then of course you have to. The eighth condition or the next condition is that one should perform wudu with the niyat of qurbat. You cannot do any religious act, as I mentioned in the previous session. You cannot do any religious act without the niyyah of qurbah, without the niyyah of complying God's order, without the niyyah of seeking proximity and closeness or nearness to God. Every religious act that is not performed with the niyyah of seeking nearness to God and with the niyyah of complying God's order would be void. It would not be in order. So every religious act must be done with the intention, with the niyyah of complying God's order and seeking nearness to God. Now there is a question normally asked by people: is it necessary? Is it mandatory? Is it obligatory to utter the niyat, to recite the niyat orally and verbally, or not? To just pass it through your mind would be sufficient. Of course, there is no doubt that niyat or the intention is a matter of heart and mind. It is something that you keep in your mind. It is something that you have in your mind. It is not something that you should recite it. Of course, if you recite it, that means that you have it in your mind. You cannot recite something unless you form your mind, you form the intention, of course. So whenever you are going to perform a religious act, an act of worship, it is necessary, it is very much necessary to form the niyat. And forming the niyat is an essential, an integral part of a religious act. It is not necessary to utter the niyat. It is not necessary to recite the niyat orally. It is not necessary to read the niyat and recite it verbally or orally. To pass it through your mind would be sufficient.
ناجيتك يا رحمن ودعوتك يا ديان يا خالق الإنسان الله 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 يا خالق الإنسان الله الله الله.
This is a question normally asked by people. Some people make wudu and some other perform ghusl and some other people offer prayers. It does not make any difference whether you offer prayers or whether you observe fast, whether you make wudu or you do ghusl. So the niyat is a matter of the heart. It's something that is related to the heart and mind. It is not necessary to recite the niyat verbally. Even if you are offering your prayers, just to put it, to cross it through your mind would suffice for the niyat. Niyat is as important as the whole prayer. Without the niyat, the whole act of worship collapses. Without the niyat, the whole duty would be invalid. Now, the ninth condition is that wudu should be performed in the prescribed sequence. Now, sequence is very much important. You cannot perform wudu with an interval in between each act. For example, you wash your face now and then you wash your face after 5 minutes, 10 minutes and 20 minutes. This is not correct. There should be succession. Each act, each part should follow the other part without any interval. It should happen immediately after the other. Now you wash your face and then without any pause, you have to wash your hands and you need to do the wiping. You need to wipe the front part of your head and also the legs. Of course, if you are walking during wudu, it will not affect your wudu. For example, you are washing your face and then you walk a few steps, go and forth and back or to and fro. That will not affect your wudu. Walking and talking and such other things, or looking at some other people, or laughing, for example. What is important is to make the niyat and then do the actions in succession, one after another. Walking for a few steps and then coming back and using water to wash the rest of the parts of wudu will not affect and will not destroy the wudu. Now the tenth condition is that the acts of wudu should be done one after the other. Of course, as I said, one is the sequence and the other is the succession. Sequence means that first of all you need to wash your face, and then you have to wash the right hand and then the left hand, and then you have to wipe the front part of your head and then the upper part of your feet, beginning with the right one and ending with the left one. Now this is called sequence. As far as the succession is concerned, this is the 10th condition. I actually described and explained both of them in one go, but that is not. Now the 10th explanation is that the acts of wudu should be done one after another. There should not be any interval in between. The 11th condition is that a person doing wudu should wash his hands and face and wipe his head and feet himself. He himself should be involved and performing wudu. No one else should be engaged and involved in his act of wudu. He himself should do it independently of others. Of course, there are sometimes there are some people who, due to some problems, cannot perform wudu. Either they are handicapped, or they are weak, or they are very sick, or they are emaciated, and there are many other excuses that can jump up and can rise. If such a person does exist, then of course he can seek help of another person. He can ask someone to help him to perform wudu. The 12th condition is that there should be no constraint for using water. Of course, if there is an illness, if the time is too short, these are all constraints, these are all difficulties, and such difficulties should not arise. If, for example, water is harmful for you, if making wudu is injurious to your health, then of course wudu would not be valid. In that case, it is your duty to perform wudu, to perform tayammum. You cannot do wudu, you cannot make wudu because of certain constraints, certain problems and difficulties that you are facing. The 13th condition is that there should be no impediment in the way of water reaching the parts of wudu. I have explained this, that when you are performing wudu, you should make sure that there is no dirt or no obstruction on the parts of wudu. For example, when you want to make wudu, you have to make sure that all parts of the wudu are clean and that there is no dirt, nothing that may obstruct or may prevent water from reaching the skin. If there is any obstruction, any impediment, you have to remove it before wudu. Otherwise, if you come to know that there had been an impediment that prevented water from reaching the skin and the time has passed, then of course your wudu had been invalid and you cannot count that wudu as valid. So the prayers that you have offered need to be offered afresh. They need to be repeated and offered again. Sometimes when you are performing wudu, you have long nails and there is some kind of actually dirt under the fingernails. The dirt under the fingernails would not affect wudu. There is no objection to that, and of course it's not necessary to remove the dirt. It's not necessary to even cut down or trim your fingernails. You can keep the fingernails, and it's not haram to have long nails. And the dirt, of course, as far as health issues are concerned, it's always recommended that you keep yourself healthy and that you keep yourself clean. As for the dirt under the fingernails is concerned, of course, you have to remove it in order to remain healthy and in order to make sure that your health will not be affected as a result of that dirt. If a person doubts after wudu whether any obstruction was there or not, his wudu will be valid. You have performed wudu, and after performing wudu, you start doubting whether there was an impediment on my face, whether there was any kind of, for example, dirt on my hands or on my feet. Of course, you need not to pay heed to your doubt. You need not to pay attention to your doubt. Your wudu is considered to be valid. These are some of the rules and some of the conditions related to wudu. And in order that the wudu may be valid, you have to take notice of these 13 conditions. Inshallah, some other rules are left which I will explain in the next session to come. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
اللهم اختم بعفوك أجلي وحقق في رجاء رحمتك أملي وسهل إلى بلوغ رضاك سبلي وحسن في جميع أحوالي عملي.